one has gone. Nothing but empty bottles, smoke-filled halls. Over in the corner, she's had one too many now. Sleeping off her body and there's no one else around. And she said, got to be young. A dress is baby, got it like it's happy. It's dreaming, should be happy. So much is dreaming, it's good, can't feel nothing. This way. This way. Don't wait on this break, 'cause I'm high as a kite. Please don't mention it, 'cause I won't come down tonight. Put his hand on my shoulder. It's impossible to deny. I hardly knew him, but he said what they always say. I said, he lost straight to vision. Drink Texas, baby, got it like it's happy. I should be
What's happening? Benton here. As always, thank you so much for joining me. We're going audio only for the most part, although there's always the potential to share the screen and possibly play some videos, although that apparently got me in trouble yesterday. The replay of yesterday's live stream. Oh, by the way, shout out to the chat. Truly Bursting, good to see you. Musical's a Secret. And Pamela, I see, has just popped in. But yeah, yesterday's replay was blocked due to, I think when I was playing some music, I also had the video on the screen. And because it was even though it was a static image, I guess just that static image caused the video to be blocked on account of copyright. Still figuring out how the YouTube works. Probably not going to be playing as much music here and there, and certainly won't be sharing the screen or showing any video. At least not the video owned by major corporations. Anyway, not completely sure how it all works, but hopefully that clears that up. Because Truly Bursting had said that he was going to watch the last stream. It got taken down due to copyright. Was it music or some video? Both. Peace. Yeah, I think now what happens with if I play just the audio is it's a copyright claim on the video, and it just means on my video, and I'm just unable to earn money, which the channel's not monetized anyway, since it's under 1,000 subscribers. Good to see you, Tranquil Vortex, and Pamela, of course, as previously mentioned. I always review, even my just regular human conversations. I review, in my mind. I do a review of the live stream. I have this. I've talked about it before. I think about it as like a carousel, like a. It just goes on in my head 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's the process of analysis. And before I really understood it and accepted it, certainly used to cause me a lot of anxiety and just various issues in my life. Finally, I pulled my head out of my ass and realized, well, probably I should just let this thing do what it does, since regardless of whether or not I intervene or attempt to intervene, I have this process of analysis always going on in my brain. So many years ago, I learned to divorce myself from the process itself, but I still have, access to that information. So something stuck in my craw yesterday about the stream that I'll be getting into here shortly. But let's take our time. Hopefully, I'm not disturbing anyone that's also paying their hard-earned money. Well, maybe not their hard-earned money, but who is also paying for a motel room. And I will be re-upping on the motel room for at least 1 week, one more week. And I am the type, I do like a budget, and although not necessarily all of the time, but especially now, and as you'll see, if you notice the Powered by StreamYard icon, the belt tightening has already begun. So the things I don't have to spend money on are already starting to go away, such as StreamYard, which it's nice to have the $25 a month version, but it's not strictly necessary for what we're doing over here. Yeah, I don't remember what the other one was. Music Holds a Secret says that I had 2 videos blocked recently, copyright. And I am aware that I can go in and remove, the content in question, but which I may or may not do. But then we just get around to, what else am I doing in my life? How much time do I really want to devote to that? Oh, and time management. Before I get into finances and budgeting, that's something else I'm realizing about the live streaming, that my time management and the live streaming was sort of built into my lifestyle and my job. It all kind of became one thing versus me just being in this motel room. Even though I'm not working, I'm not spending hours every day, towards a job or employment. Now I'm getting more into my health routine. My health does seem to be, I don't know if improvement is even the right term, but it's not as bad as it has been. The truck driving is certainly more of a, there's certainly aspects of mental and physical endurance. And I would say yesterday and this morning, that's probably the most actual rest I've had in quite some time. I ended up just passing out from, I guess, presumably from cannabinoid intoxication, which that is what we'll be getting into as well. I will be discussing some of that from yesterday and some of Kim's ridiculous statements that I tend not to understand in the moment. And I was, we know about tolerance and all of this around cannabis. That's the first cannabis I've had in quite some time. So, tolerance not being a thing. We could see the broadcast yesterday was certainly out of the norm for yours truly here. I was lost in treading water most of the broadcast, I would have to say. So I think I did pretty good overall, all things considered. Yeah, I'm a little bit lost there. Scott Core says it wasn't a claim or accusation. Truly Bursting, who said I was human? I am human still, but I was just referring to myself in the past, not that. Oh yeah, that's a Zuckerberg. Yeah. By the way, shout out to that movie, The Social Network, although apparently not necessarily accurate historically. I found that to be an interesting flick, as it were. Oh, you're good, Scotty. Might be, you never know what's going on in the live chat, so I try not to read too much into that. But yeah, and I had ordered a bunch of nutritional supplements that I had never tried before. I found a section of Amazon, which I haven't even been able to get back to, where it just took me to products that were heavily discounted and available to me because I'm a Prime member. Well, guess what? That's about to go away. So I was looking into, I forget, they have some kind of term for it in the website for Amazon. And I was looking at, there's some kind of option where instead of ending the membership today, it ends it at the end of the month, but then or end of the period. But then they're also telling me in the meantime, you'll lose these certain privileges. So I got to this section where I was able to sort the nutritional supplements based on, a special price only available to me because I'm a Prime member. So I found some really good deals on some supplements, some of which I haven't been taking, in the course of my illness, my various illnesses. So I think that had something to do with between that and the cannabis. I was just passed out by like 4 p.m. I think yesterday, maybe earlier. Not really sure. Yeah, YouTube is just crazy, man. Like I'm not a fan, and eventually, and I think this is part of me going audio only, at least while I'm not driving a truck. And who even knows? I never know what I'll be doing in the future necessarily, whether or not I'll even go back to driving a truck. But and I am a fan of the audio only. Just me personally, I do like the audio only. Although I recognize I would expect if I go just audio only that the especially the live viewers aren't going to be as uh, as high because something about the pushing out of that thumbnail with the human face in it where you can tell or multiple human faces. There's certainly that seems to draw in the viewers for sure. So I know that in the meantime, I may be talking to a smaller audience than normal, which is fine. And then that reminds me of a study about supposedly they did a study with monkeys, and whoever knows, this could just be completely made up. And then it's like, well, I'm not a monkey, so um, you know, it's up to you, the listener, to decide what is the relevance of this. But something about monkeys in this study, if they were given a choice between being able to look at the face of like the alpha monkey, and I'm not saying I'm that, I'm just talking about more about how we maybe really like to look at faces. And then you can juxtapose that with the whole mask situation of the last several years. But that even like instead of receiving like some kind of sugary drink, I think it was from memory, the monkey would actually choose to, given a choice, they would rather look at the face of the so-called alpha monkey, the alpha chimp. Yeah, Benton, alpha monkey. Oh man. Well, that's not always a good thing, and I don't really even believe in as presented now. If you, because I've known about that, whatever that theory is, for many years. And that's all situational. Like I've talked about before, there's not really such a thing as like the alpha, and and a lot of this stuff just loses all meaning anyway. Like beta is not a pejorative, but we've turned it into that, mainly saying like every man's supposed to be a so-called alpha, which if you look at the hierarchy, like that's not even possible. And even if it was, it's still situational. Like, yeah, the vice president is holding a meeting. He's the alpha until the CEO unexpectedly walks in the room. Now it's like, okay, well, there's two, but now, okay, if there's two, well, some of the people in the meeting might also meet that criteria. Uh, See how quickly things get complicated. They devolve into complication very quickly. And then the human mind always trying to go 0 or 1, always trying to simplify, simplify, simplify. But yeah, truly bursting. I've gotten to where I can't even really even process. It's just like I'm going to do my thing on YouTube, and they're either going to let me do it or they're not. And again, this is initially when Drew had me on Chalk Body Outline like 3 years ago now, and people were like, "What's Benton's channel? What's Benton's channel?" And I was like, "I'm not going to have a channel. I'm not giving my content to YouTube." That's how I felt in the past, and so I started paid money to start my own website and had a 56 episodes of a popular podcast, at least in this niche realm of so-called truth. It was way bigger than my channel. It was actually bigger than Drew's channel, believe it or not, which I'm still not even sure how that happened, the podcast itself, but it's a different thing. And a lot of people, I think, can only like listen at work. So, hence the audio only. And I like the audio only. As I previously mentioned, shout out to 9 folks in here. Actually 10, because I'm not one of the 10. Yeah, like normal. And if there's, as always, if there's anything you folks want to get into, feel free to hit me in the chat. But yeah, basically, like what happened with Twitter, I have a brain for Twitter. Like I think in tweets in a lot of ways, and I had some really good tweets. And at one point, Twitter just suspended me because they thought I might be a bot because I can read and type so fast. And then once I was like, well, no, I'm not a bot. Then I got suspended for the content of my opinion, which I don't even remember what it was. And now I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be on this. Not going to be on this platform. And I left Twitter never to return. Same thing with YouTube. So it's not a threat or we need to be fearful, because we like to hear Benton, and through Drew's contacts, he's in touch enough. I'll be able to, even if I did just disappear from YouTube, I would pop up somewhere else. And, I would say, check out Chalk Body Outline YouTube channel. Surely he would shout me out wherever I end up at. What's up, Moose? Good to see you, bro. Yeah, I think it was an interesting time yesterday. Just something about the being intoxicated on cannabis. I'm already a little kind of out of it and oblivious to the conversations in some regard. That the cannabis seems to magnify those effects. But let me look over my notes real quick, see what I want to get into before I get into it here. But yeah, the budgeting, I'm already into some budgeting. In the past, when I had a limited income, I always had like a written budget that I adhered to. Even, believe it or not, with my second wife, I had our household on a budget that we adhered to, which is more or less an impossibility in today's America. How many people, and I understand that we're in a self-selecting group, so I don't mean you guys. I don't mean you folks listening. I mean the greater masses of people, that 85% I love to refer to. It's effectively they do not make a written budget, and if they do, they certainly don't adhere to it. So yeah, already sort of tightening the belt, and going to do at least one more week, probably 2 more weeks in the motel, most likely. At that point, though, I'll be down to what I consider my actual savings, which is an amount I would prefer not to go below, but I'm certainly willing to. And then when I was drinking myself to death, I just didn't even concern myself with finances, obviously. Although I do have some, now that I think about it, I will have some extra money, because previously when I was living in a motel, although I am paying more per week for this room, I'm not spending however much money a day on alcohol like I was before. And then I think what I just talked about is an interesting, it's an excellent demonstration of Mr. Benton here tends to think things through. So then we get into Kim before the storm trying to make me appear silly, which I think that's what that was. Actually, that was attempting to make Benton look silly for buying a THCO THCP vape pen from a gas station, which I will admit, we have no way of knowing what that actually is. Now, if we assume it actually is what they say it is, in light of how polluted and our environment is, how, we're under chemical attack anyway, like, does it really matter if the cannabinoids I'm putting in my body, started out as CBD, and then some chemist, through a process of chemistry, a few of those molecules got flipped around, and now it's THCO and THCP. Like, does that really matter? Is that going to harm my health? Oh, that's right, I'm dying of various illnesses. So even if it is going to harm my health, like, in what ways, to what extent, is it really going to fucking matter? But then some people would take that way of thinking, and then they would just apply that across the board, which gets us into patterns and pattern recognition. And I certainly want to talk about patterns, especially with respect to human behavior, human interpersonal relations, and then how we tend to interact with each other. Especially me, I've noticed that. So, and I want to get specifically into what happened. And not that anything happened, it's not a drama, but with what Kim said about the vape pen. And then, to me, I'm able to turn that into a lesson on patterns and humans using patterns in their relations. But what I've noticed with most people is they tend to apply these patterns across the board with all different types of people, with people who if there's some variation in the patterns, you may see based on like a hierarchy of, well, does this person so-called outrank me? Do I outrank this person? On some sort of social hierarchy, if I'm even making sense. And I think I am, but we'll take our time and get into that. But what I would view this pattern is, it's one in which we're listening to the other person talk, which would be me, And then when we're isolating, oh, he purchased a vape pen with so-called um, uh, synthetic cannabinoids, and then that triggers a couple of different patterns, one of which is problem solving. And that's, I've been fascinated with this just by watching people and doing a lot of observation of people's patterns, and just how frequently, especially men, but women do this to some extent as well. Um, and again, I'm a misanthrope, so what's between somebody's legs, that's not a good enough reason for me to determine if I like them or dislike them. On some level, I dislike all of you, solely based on your humanity. So, uh, lest we forget, and that's a bit tongue in cheek, but there's, it's funny because it's true on some level. And I think I lost my greater point there, but we'll get back to it. We got time. Well, yeah, and this is an astute comment by Pamela, is as long as what I'm taking is helping me feel better, who cares whether it is synthetic, it is better than pharmaceuticals. Well, yeah, in the actual the vape pen is just Benton likes to get fucked up, and Benton can't drink. And I really don't even like drinking. The more I've reviewed trying to drink myself to death, it a lot of that was based on I wasn't able to take in cannabis because of my job. So now I know every time I hit this vape pen, I'm actually extending out the period of time before which I can go back into truck driving. And then see how one thing ties into the next thing, and it's all interconnected. So now we get into the budgeting, which is, the budget switches to it's a completely different animal because there's no money coming in. And in fact, I thought maybe I would get paid today, direct deposit. Now, usually it's already hit by now. It hasn't hit, although it's even been as late as tomorrow. So, assuming that they don't hit my prepaid debit card account, assuming that doesn't happen, most likely they've mailed my last check. Although it is possible they just decided not to give me any more money. That's certainly within the realm of possibility. At which point it would be for me to go through like the workforce division or whatever that is, whatever faction of the state government here in Texas is responsible for making them pay. And they would eventually pay me. They would probably just exhaust whatever that window of time is. Yeah, synthetic or pharmaceuticals. Well, and I'm not taking any pharmaceuticals, but the thing about this is if I'm physically in the state of Texas and I don't know people, well, actually, I probably do know somebody, but if assuming I'm not plugged into a network where I can just go purchase through a black market, but I can go into a gas station and here's a vape pen and it will absolutely get me fucked up and I want to get fucked up. Why wouldn't I do the vape pen? What's happening? We got old Toilet Bowl Earth. Shout out to Toilet Bowl Earth. Yeah. Moose offering up the lattes. Quality, not quantity. Well, what are we talking about? You talking about with the cannabis? I'm talking about a THCO vape pen, which I've caught some shit for on the live stream yesterday, and I'm going to get into that. What's up, Woody? Good to see you, brother. But I think the ultimate point I'm trying to make, or one of the points I'm trying to make, is if someone's goal is intoxication, and what is available is a vape pen from a gas station with so-called synthetic cannabinoids, like what would be the reason not to do that? What's up, Rob Cleveland? Good to see you. So if anybody, and I know some of the folks were here yesterday when now, and also what I find fascinating was that what I'm about to describe, and I guess I still got the video on my StreamYard. I guess I could go in and play it, but I don't know that I want to waste the amount of time that will be required to go to that exact portion of the broadcast. So when I said something about and by the way, I always do my standard disclaimers to let the audience know that I'm aware of what I'm taking. So let's get into the patterns here. I think this is what most of us experience is most of the people in our daily lives are doofuses. I mean, is that a yay or an A? Like, am I way out of bounds there? Because I think that's the case. It seems like what I've observed from most of the people in the so-called truth community is, part of the reason for spending so much time in or on or near the metaverse is because in our daily lives, most of the people we interact with in the physical space are a bunch of doofuses. Is that accurate, or I need to know if I'm onto something or if I'm just far afield here. No, I missed that. Maybe we'll go check some of that out. Maybe we'll do some replay of that. If I'm truly the content machine, and that's the title of the live stream, by the way, content machine question mark, because that will become questionable as my schedule changes and there's something about driving that truck that definitely lends itself to speaking at length. Something about getting into that flow state a little bit easier potentially. Yeah, I hate people also. Yeah, so a lot of these patterns, I think, and this is going to be speaking to Kim specifically, and me and him have talked about publicly. We've discussed that he seems to have developed some of these patterns based on being around a bunch of dumbos, and he was able to sort of just carry the day because he was, smarter than they were, and they didn't. He sort of did himself a disservice in a way by developing these patterns, over time. And now he's still acting on those. He's still reverting to those patterns, but then it's confusing him because he's getting a different result because those patterns always carried the day with the dumbos, at least in the context of some sort of, logic and reason. I'm not calling you a doofus. I just mean, that most of the people we interact with are doofuses. So if that's what we're used to, and somebody shows up with a vape pen of synthetic cannabinoids, that's a doofus. They don't know that they're doing synthetic cannabinoids. They don't know that there's a potential downside to this. So then we activate the problem solving. Hey, doofus, why are you doing that when you know that I can hook you up with organic flour that's not going to be problematic, right? So it's a person used to interacting with doofuses. The doofus shows up with a vape pen. Okay, now there's a problem for me to solve, coming from Kim's perspective. So he literally said, why didn't you just have me send you some? Well, number one, Kim, when I live my life, I never factor in Kim's potential problem solving abilities. Like, that's not part of my life. Like, whatever you may or may not have the ability to solve for me is not a factor. Like, that's number one, not a consideration. So that's probably the actual answer to the question. And I didn't mind just playing along for round one, but then I said the reason. Well, okay, let me accept your premise, Kim, that you could provide me with organic, chemical-free cannabis flower or concentrate or whatever. We didn't get into specifics. So let me accept your premise. Well, okay, if I was going to eschew the vape pen yesterday or the day before, then what I would do is I would transport my physical being to a state where I can acquire and consume these products legally. And in what's in parentheses, I've already thought this through, you fucking idiot. Not you, the listener, but Kim. Because why? Because this pattern that he's attempting to apply to me, the pattern was created to be run on doofuses. So what kind of idiot takes a pattern intended for a doofus and then runs it on a person who's not? Now, I am a doofus in my own way, but I'm not a doofus in this way. I don't go to a store and select a vape pen and then inhale without thinking about every single possibility, because that's what I do, because I've got the 24/7 in my head. I've analyzed every possible angle of this thing, and I chose to buy a vape pen. So the fact that Benton chose to buy the vape pen, that's all you need to know. But if you're running a pattern that was intended for doofuses, you can't ever just be like, well, I know this doofus, they think through everything they do before they do it. So I know when I see the doofus that anything I object with, they've already thought it through and they can say, well, actually, I would have done it this way or that way. And how many of us, not us, the listeners, but in the, the larger masses, the running of these scripts and patterns, and then it just drives me nuts when it's applied to me, because really it's like a child. It's like Benton hits a vape pen, and then the child's like, "Why?" It's very infantile to me. It's like, well, okay, I'll answer your question, Kim, but you may not like the answer. The answer is because I have a reason or reasons that make sense to me. And that's always the answer to why is this person doing this, by the way. It's always the answer. So round one was bad enough, but then I answer him and he goes back for round two of, why didn't you just have me send you some? Well, okay, number one, I'm not willing, legally speaking, I'm not willing to have people send me drugs through the mail. I'm assuming that's what you mean. So do I need to answer this literally, sir? But then now we get into all of the reasons why it's safe. Yeah, I've already thought all that through, sir. I've been in Humboldt with a farmer who was happy to front me a pound, but I was going to send it to Arkansas. So I'm very well aware of the logistics around packaging up flour and sending it through the post. Again, we're running patterns that were created with the masses of doofuses and then applying them to me. That's very unintelligent. I mean, that's an example of an otherwise intelligent person doing something stupid. Now, we all do this to some extent. I have my own version of this also. And part of this is that I am particularly sensitive to pattern recognition. I see these patterns very easily. Moose telling stories of the motel game, apparently. Yeah, flush your bozos. There you go. Yeah, no kidding, man. But then we get back to the context of, for whatever reason, yesterday, and I think this maybe some of these gals want to practice, because is this still happening? Isn't there supposed to be a ladies' night show on isn't that tonight, the 30th, if I recall correctly? So I think maybe some of these ladies were gearing up for, if that's still happening over on In a Thought Experiment YouTube channel. Maybe some of these ladies were gearing up for that. Not exactly sure, but there was way more than the normal number of ladies, on the panel yesterday. So then I start to think, well, is this also, and I've especially noticed this culturally where Kim is from in Southern California. They seem to have a lot of this baked into their culture. The men sort of, jockeying for position and using like humor and things, sort of, making fun of another guy in front of ladies. So we really don't have that in my culture. It's really not a thing. And part of that is I understand ladies enough to realize. So part of that is Kim is making me appear foolish or silly in the moment, which is in a context of there's ladies present. And he obviously was attempting to flirt to some degree, which is great. That's what he's supposed to do. Now, I'm of the school of don't play or hate, play or participate. So I never do anything that could be considered cock blocking. I'll just shut up, and if somebody wants to run game, they can run game. It's fine with me. I'm not going to interject myself into that, right? But I also view this as, let's make Benton appear foolish, which I think accounts for the second lap around the track. It's like, well, wait a minute, I just answered that. Now, are we really going back around to why didn't you? And it also, that's he's assuming an air of authority by, okay, Benton, I've made you look silly because you've potentially committed what I view to be an error, and I'm the strong authority figure that is able to provide for your needs, right? And then we view like traditionally the male role is one of provider. So he's actually whether he knows it or not, he's attempting to demonstrate to the ladies present that he uh, is potentially able to fill the role of provider. Now, how much of this is going on in his subconscious and he's not even aware of it? And now it's obviously easier for me to spot it through observing him than it is for him to spot it through a process of introspection. But meanwhile, my base level is annoyance, and I'm just annoyed. So now I'm just sitting here. Well, and I'm stoned and confused. But then, there's also this, like, really, like, is this what I'm having to deal with here? Oh no, I'm choosing to deal with this. Okay, this is my hobby. You're telling me? Okay, interesting. Not only does it you not make money from this, it costs you money, and this guy's breaking your balls to no effect. By the way, because if you understand women don't respond to this. Uh, that's something that men have created. That's women. It's neither here nor there for them. Generally, there's always exceptions to everything, but the fact that maybe he can diminish me, that doesn't magnify him. And I think that's where a lot of men get confused. It's just, no, you've taken one of the fellows of the group and you've temporarily diminished him, but that doesn't then magnify you. But then we get into, in the women's eyes, it just doesn't work that way. And now they can come and say whatever they want. I'm talking about what they observably respond to, which is generally not the same thing they say that they respond to. Yeah. And I studied all of this for years, so it's as ridiculous as that sounds. So I do have some measure of attainment in the area. As ridiculous as it sounds. Yeah, well, and Pamela says this about my old material. Well, actually, Toilet Bowl Earth here had saved a video that I posted back when I was attempting to drink myself to death on the Discord. Actually, I had two different alcohol binges, so I don't remember which binge it came from. Extended alcohol binges, and I'm not good at remembering what happened when, but yeah, I was not that it's an excuse. But I think once a person stops drinking, I think it's natural for me to just view that behavior with embarrassment because I was intoxicated more or less all day, every day back during that time period. So I was certainly heavily intoxicated for the videos themselves. But I'm not a type of person that drinks alcohol and then their behavior changes that much either. So, that's certainly not out of bounds for my normal behavior. It's just maybe a magnification of it. But yeah, apparently people are responding positively to it, which is unexpected. I personally would not have expected a positive reaction. So there's always that. Maybe we'll play some of that. I don't know that I could watch back when I was drunk. I watched all of that several times. In fact, I posted my own clips of it. In fact, I think what he has is that was curated. I think I chose to put those clips out, I believe. So I'm pretty sure I watched all of the footage and I was drunk and I thought it was great. I've gone to visit a highly suspect in Georgia and I showed him some of it and he didn't seem to react that well to it, but he was going through his own shit at the time anyway. So not sure. Well, and then like Woody says here, it's that kind of cutting each other down as part of Aussie culture. Some of it has a stem from insecurity, the desperate need to fill the air with words. But then, and yeah, there you go. But I would also say with Kim, I believe a lot of that was based on maybe not round one. He might have just did round one anyway, but I especially think coming back around to round two was just based on there's ladies there. So it's a different dynamic. And he was overtly attempting to flirt with the ladies, which is good. That's what he's, it's good. He should, to some extent anyway. it can certainly become overbearing or annoying after a while. Yeah, it does feel like a long time ago. Yes, it does. I agree. The whatever that was in the past. And then when it's just men together, I think there's some of that, there's always going to be some breaking of balls, and I've never had a problem with that personally, but to me it was just bizarre. It was like, what do you mean? Like do you really think I don't know what a vape pen from the fucking gas station, like what that entails? Like I clearly chose to do it anyway, but again, patterns developed for doofuses because the doofus just sees the vape pen in the store and doesn't read anything into it. Or Benton can give you 45-minute dissertations on, every little aspect of the whole thing. And I don't even mind the having my balls broken so much as just I'm just annoyed, and it's like, why? Like, do we really have to do this? And then where I connect it to the patterns is, see, this is something I'm able to do, although again, not across the board. And there's times I fall victim to applying a pattern to people that I should not apply it to. But part of that is I'm observing their reaction also. So hopefully over time, I'm refining my system of using these patterns, right? But then I also think this brings us to, it's my assertion that manipulation is the basis of all human behavior and interaction, but we just don't like to admit it because we just assume manipulation's always negative. And what I would say was, well, why would you presuppose? Because it sounds negative, because the word manipulate sounds negative. But if you just read the definition of it, it's it's not wholly negative. It's not a wholly negative connotation. But yeah, we all try to get some sort of outcome, whether we admit it or not, whether we know what outcome we're seeking or not. Anytime a human being goes into an interaction with another human being, outside of like a mother's love and, outside of maybe some family dynamics, but I'm just generally, workplace, friends, internet, whatever. Like we're all trying to get something out of it. And whether we admit it or not, we're all going to do and say certain things to try to get, you know, a specific outcome or outcomes, or to make it more likely that a certain outcome will occur. That just seems like how it works to me. Well, yeah, I hear you, pretty. Pretty. It's hard name for me to say in my accent. But she says panels are not for everyone. She could never do well in a panel. Probably it would be boring. Yeah, it certainly is at times. Well, and that's what we saw yesterday is with between me treading water and then the conversations themselves at times just devolving into small talk. But then with the added aspect of flirting, and then whoever that lady was, the loudmouth lady. No offense if you're watching now or you see the replay, loudmouth lady, but you are a loudmouth lady. I mean, that is an apt description. So it's like if you call me, I'm very dense. I'm a very dense individual. I'm oblivious and dense much of the time. So if you call me dense and oblivious, I will not consider it an insult. It's an observation, but that was a loudmouth lady. I think we can all admit. What was her name? Quantum something or other. I forget. Yeah, especially with her in the mix, it certainly changed the dynamic quite a bit. And as I've noticed, as you may or may not have noticed, because I don't think Pretty is around here as much as some folks here in our house. Whose house? Our house. Benton can barely get a word in edgewise on his own channel. So I'm not very good at panels just at all. Oh, and then Paul showed up yesterday, and I was like, damn, I'm fucking wasted. Well, I was about half wasted at that point. It's like, damn, I'd like to be able to have a non-weird conversation. Because that's the thing is I can be stone cold sober and like, I'm having to put a lot of effort into the shit not being weird. It's like, oh fuck. Now I've lost my barometer of is the shit weird or not? Yeah, quantum epic. And it's not a pejorative, by the way. Like, I'm a bit of a loudmouth myself. Um, although I do tend to shut the fuck up and not talk a lot of the time. But yeah, if I'm in that mode, I'm a fucking loudmouth. So it's not a it's not a pejorative. Yeah, I thought we did good when Dick was here, Freedom Grower, and OTW was here, and even Wizard. Although Wizard does tend to take over and dominate quite a bit. Although I will say, his mushroom presentation for just doing that off, on the fly. Although he didn't provide that much actual information, just going through the pictures was interesting. Although I'm not sure if he took those himself or not. And then it can be very difficult in the moment for me to extract that information without just taking over the broadcast. And there is a certain flow of conversation that I do feel pretty adept at knowing, okay, well, I'm representing the audience on some level, and I know the audience is probably curious about this thing, but if I forcefully interject here, it's going to interrupt too much of the flow. And I can sort of see where this thing's going flow wise. So I think a lot of times it's better just to err on the side of just sort of letting the conversation flow versus, but there are times when I should probably just crack the whip and be like, all right, enough of that. And I tend not to. So working on it, getting better at it. Well, yeah, and the mask thing was, that was, and it, dude, I just can't even deal with it anymore. Like I couldn't even really deal with it initially, but, um, they've won, I would say. Now, and this is also, by the way, when I see these people who wear it all day, every day, like, dude, I need more oxygen than that. Like I can't, even if I really thought that would protect me from a deadly illness, I need oxygen. Like, how do these other people? I mean, obviously their brains aren't working on the level mine is. Not that I'm some fucking genius, but I think that shows you where the doofuses are. Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it, Moose. Complimenting the balance. It's not my strong suit in life, by the way. So whatever small amounts of balance I managed to achieve, uh, yeah, my physical balance very good, by the way, as far as my body. Yeah, mushroom season. There you go, Woody. Yeah. I wish I knew. I understand I can learn. I'm telling you that I'm not going to. But yeah, that's what stops me from going out and eating all kinds of mushrooms. Is I'm not confident in my ability to. I'm not confident enough in my ability to then consume the mushrooms and at the risk of being poisoned. But for somebody like Woody, who I'm certain has that knowledge, that's a great thing to understand. I'm sure because even excluding magic mushrooms, there's lots of beneficial mushrooms out there, as Wizard pointed out the other day. Well, and I was really just mostly there was something going on with me, that I felt the need to unleash for whatever reason. But fuck them, bunch of bozos. Anyway, I don't want to get off onto the mass stuff. But yeah, fascinating. The reviewing that the Kim before the storm, and that's where the intuition comes in. Is something about that was bothering me, and I just spent some time, and I figured it out. Initially I was like, why is that bothering me? Well, but there's lessons. There's lessons in there, I think, and one of which is my frustration around, and that's what a normie does, by the way. A normie, Kim, behaves this way because the normie thinks like a normie and has trouble understanding. Oh, Benton, everything he thinks and his opinion, like this is all out of left field. So obviously he's not going to think or behave like a normie doofus, right? But then a lot of that gets applied to me as if I'm operating on the normie doofus levels. But wait, haven't we realized that Benton's weird? Doesn't he get called a weirdo all the time? An unusual person, an oddball? Okay, that's great. Treat me as such. Why am I being subjected to the patterns that we run on the normie doofuses? Because believe me, I go in public, and if it's a bunch of normie doofuses, I've got my own scripts I'm running just to let's get through this and get on to the next thing, right? Meanwhile, I also have a healthy dose of I don't give a fuck. Like, why do we even care that I bought a THCO pen from the gas station, Kim? Like, well, who cares? Believe me, if I scrutinized all of your behaviors, I would find many, many things that would be objectionable to me. But I'm not you. I'm not sure, Woody. That's a good question. He says, if you are always annoyed, will you inevitably find an object or person to be annoyed at? I think it's more of just it's just my base emotional state. And I don't think it means much of anything. I don't connect it to stuff, generally speaking. But then we get into, as a human, I can become resentful if I allow certain things to build up, right, over time. Then that's where it becomes a anger seeking an outlet, because that's what annoyance is, a form of anger, right? So it's just I'm basically like always pissed off to some extent, which is not, see, it's not a bad thing. It sounds bad. It's not. It's always, that's a fuel. It's a fuel source, or can be. So now we get into the delicate balancing act of life. Yep. Shout out to THCO. Yeah. How were those edibles yesterday? I don't like to do the edibles I like to do actual cannabis, actual THC 9, Delta 9 if I'm doing edibles, me personally. That's why I go for the vape pens. Although a little rough on the old lungs, I must say. Well, and then the Delta 8, God, if you get just straight Delta 8, brutal. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's, because I have a high tolerance, or if autism's a thing, I think people on the spectrum, it just takes more cannabinoids to get them to the same place as someone else. So, yeah, I tend to need a lot. Yeah, right on. He said his edibles were good. He's got some left. Cool, man. Where's my water? Oh, there it is. Yeah, and I do have a hard out. I'm going to be going to Walmart. Actually, probably going to leave in about 45 minutes or so, maybe a little earlier. That's another thing, back to the time management. I don't necessarily just have these blocks of hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to do live streams like I did before. Even though I'm not employed, although I may be, I actually need to check and verify that. Although I guess if they don't pay me this week, maybe that'd be a good sign. I don't know. It's kind of all up in the air. I'm assuming that I was fired, but hard to know sometimes. Well, and that's a substitute for a personality, Pamela. Pamela finds it odd that people use their diet or healthy lifestyle as a weapon or as a way to feel superior. I don't know who it was, but I heard someone get ripped a new a-hole for eating sugar. Well, and that's the thing is, like, do whatever you want. My thing is, what I realized, and some of this is just people haven't evolved sometimes in a certain sphere, and I'm certainly haven't, in many spheres, but this is one sphere I'm pretty evolved in. Is I know there's a lot of people who engage in activities that they know is negative, but they continue to engage in the activity, but they do it, they feel guilt, and they suppress and repress. My thing was, okay, I'm about to eat 2 honey buns, but I'm not going to feel any guilt, and I'm going to enjoy this experience. Because why? Because when I talk about that, I made a rule for myself many years ago called never bullshit yourself. Now, there's times when the rule fails, right? But I practice that rule in my life, in my own head. So I can't ever, I'm never get to the point of attempting to justify eating 2 honey buns, which of course I don't now. But so I'll give you an example. I had a justification. I noticed when I was living in the streets that, a big part of me transitioning into that lifestyle was taking my mental health very seriously. And this is something I wanted to talk about yesterday, but I was too fucked up to really get into it, was the stigma around mental health. That was something I was also sort of dealing with, in my time living in the streets, was just realizing how strong the stigma around mental health is in the United States. But then the mental health is very poor, overall, I would say. But then we want to view ourselves as if, oh, my mental health's great and so is my family's mental health. But it's like, statistically, well, no, probably not. At least some of those folks are struggling with their mental health, and maybe you as well, or not you, the listener, but in that example, maybe that person is struggling with their mental health. So I realized that I need a lot of, for my brain to function properly, and also my emotional system, but especially my brain, I need a lot of saturated fat, uh, dietary cholesterol. Well, if a person has very limited money and they realize, wow, I realize, wow, my mental health is starting to suffer because it's a nutritional cause, and I have enough money to buy 2 honey buns. Well, honey buns are bad for you objectively because of all the sugar and the trans fats, which I think trans fats are now banned, but these had trans fats. This was a while back. And I do read the package. Even if I'm going to eat something bad, I read the package. But they're very high in saturated fat and dietary cholesterol. Honey buns are. That like 35, like one honey bun is like 35 grams of saturated fat. But my thing is, if I'm going to eat the 2 honey buns, uh, even if I'm emotionally eating. In fact, I remember at one point I said, I even made a joke to somebody. I was like, something about you're about to observe some emotional eating or something. It's like, if you're going to do the bad thing, do the bad thing and enjoy it to the fullest, and then put it behind you, versus having this guilt, or even worse, repression around this thing you're going to do anyway. It's sort of the acceptance of, yes, I am doing a bad thing on some level. That doesn't make me a bad person. We get into a lot of guilt and shame around, and that's what I've identified with the so-called truth community, especially with me suffering from various serious illnesses and people wanting to type advice at me across the internet. But I know, if 10 people type advice to me across the internet, 7 of them are in the fast food drive-through at least once a week. That's just a fact. We can't live in America with Americans, but then each and every one of us in the so-called truth community never goes to Taco Bell, never goes to McDonald's, never goes to Chick-fil-A. It's just not a thing. And by the way, I don't care what you do. But then this idea that Benton has got to adhere to some kind of strictness. Well, I do, because that's what I do anyway, and especially with my health issues. But it's interesting how we get into these, all of these patterns again. Back to the patterns. Yeah, I did a bad thing. That's right. Yeah, and we're supposed to enjoy, but in a balance, right? You know, uh, but it's easy. When I ate a very poor diet, it was easy for me just to not even pay attention, or not care, or not concern myself with it. But I know, if someone pointed out how unhealthy I was eating, I'm assuming back then I would have become defensive, and I would have justified it some kind of way, right? But some things, it's like, that's where the never bullshit yourself comes in. It's like, no, I'm not justifying eating that. I'm just going to eat the honey buns. There's no justification for it, even though there may be. It's like, that's not the point. Because if you think about it, you can justify damn near anything, and it's a tired cliche of Hitler and the Nazis, but all of that stuff was justifiable to those people at that time, if that even happened. And I'm not saying it did, um, but I'm merely just making a point that, yeah, you can justify just about anything. Doesn't Who cares? Like that. By the way, that's how logic and reason works. It's very logical and reasonable for me to everything I just talked about. That's all based on logic and reason, but with the removal of how we feel about things. Honey bun flavored vape pen. There you go. This one's got the terpenes in it. So it tastes pretty good, actually, I have to say. Well, but then, yeah, but see, obsession again, now we're into feelings. And we do know that a lot of what people do around eating involves emotions. Of course it does. It's a way that many people cope with outside of pharmaceuticals. Because, of course, remember, just about everybody's, you know, large swaths of the masses are on these mood altering pharmaceuticals. And it's always been my view that if somebody takes chemicals that makes it impossible for them to experience like the bottom 20% of negative emotions, hopelessness, despair, all of these negative feelings, even anxiety and all of this stuff, if they're not capable of reaching those levels of emotion, is that even a full human? I would say no, it's not. And I've had my struggles with substances, mainly alcohol, but really not though. If you think about it, I have and I haven't. It's amazing how as soon as my organs tapped out, now I don't have a drinking problem. Isn't that amazing? So somebody might say, "Wow, Benton's an alcoholic. Look at this. He's got this serious alcohol problem." And I did right up until it vanished. Now I still think about it on occasion, but I've always thought about it. Now it's not an option, but then it's like, okay, vape pen because I'm not working my job. Well, thank you. If you get a good point, if Pretty says good point, it's actually a good point. I know that she's yeah. Anyway, always good to see that lady around. Most definitely. She's goes back pretty far with the chalk body outline material, if anybody's unaware. In fact, I believe she was featured on the channel at one point, if I recall correctly. Oh yeah, I want to go back to finish Pamela's point here. I got sidetracked. But yeah, and it's like, well, then you also get into some weird codependency type of situations, which I'm allergic to. I can't be involved in any sort of weird codependencies. So I'm never like, I'm just not going to have people in my life who are going to tear into me for one of my choices, unless I transgressed against them. Of course, that would be different. But number two, like how I'm mystified by who could even care enough. Like, I really don't give a fuck if y'all go through the drive-through. I'm making a point. Like, I don't really care if y'all eat cupcakes and honey buns. Like, that's your life. I believe in actual freedom. So, but who are these people who are involved in these what I would say are unhealthy relationships with other people, especially over the internet or in the metaverse, where they're actually now it's like, what does that say about the person who's putting someone down for their food choices, right? Like, what's going on with that person's emotions? That doesn't seem like a good thing. And again, show me a human, I'll show you a hypocrite. As I say this, I'm sure there's examples of me not living up to what I'm speaking here. I'm certain of that, but it's still something that it's a goal that I'm aiming towards at least. Yeah, people were nice. Yeah, Pretty says people were nice in the comments when she was on with Drew. Yeah, which was not the case with that Annapurna lady. Forget her. She's got another name. I've forgotten. Yeah, 6 million is probably too many desserts. Exactly, Woody. Indeed, sir. But yeah, the feeling superior certainly. But again, is that the person actually feeling superior, or is it them mistakenly thinking that if they diminish other people that because I do see that in a lot of people where they just assume, okay, if I can cause this other person to become diminished, then of course I'm magnified or exalted. But it just doesn't work that way as far as I can tell. I think the person doing the shaming still feels the same way. Now, maybe there is some sort of relief of stress or tension, possibly. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Certainly interesting to think about. Your thoughts, expert panel? If I could steal some of Paul's vernacular. And I think maybe Paul was wanting me to go on his panel yesterday, but dude, I was just too messed up. And in fact, passed out a couple of hours later. But I do like I do enjoy intoxication, I must say, on occasion, and I think that's going to happen again today. So it's probably good that I'm getting the live streaming out of the way early, and then I must go to Walmart. I'm out of food now, so and at my 130-pound body weight, even though I have a lot of experience marching with a rucksack, and I don't mean in the military, um, I can't carry near as much weight. So I think I'm going to end up making 2 trips to the grocery store, which is actually great because all this walking I've been doing is helping at least as much as some of these supplements when it comes to my health. And a lot of this is not. Now I'm still in the process of healing whatever can be healed, but like it or not, there's aspects of this, my pancreas, for example, it's just not ever going to fully heal, other than God Himself, whatever that is, making me a new pancreas. Uh, but a lot of this, you know, I don't think I'm too far away from, if I can get the gallbladder somewhat normal, then which is certainly. Actually, today, the way I can tell is gallbladder, you tend to have pain in your upper right shoulder. This is the least pain I've had there in a long time. And I think maybe what is that called? The glutathione. And then I got on the artichoke finally, artichoke extract tincture. And there's something else. Sweet wormwood, I guess. Quercetin, natural form of quercetin, if I'm saying that right. Oh, later on, pretty. Have a good day. Good to see you as always. And we'll get to Woody's comment here shortly. Oh yeah, I'm happy to be able to walk to Walmart twice. And the truck driving, man, as much as I enjoy it, there's various aspects of it that I find very beneficial. There's some detriments, one of which is, I have just walked laps around a truck stop before. It just sucks. I'm just not going to do that. So yeah, I understand I could make time to exercise while I drive a truck. The reality is I'm not going to. So either way, even if I had not, gotten sideways with the company, or, maybe they viewed it as I quit. I'm not really sure how they view it, to be honest with you. I don't really care. Typically, these companies, they don't want to just outright fire the person because it can make it more easy for them to draw unemployment. Although, if you actually go and read the fucking handbook and the fine print for unemployment insurance, you can pretty much get it no matter what, as far as I can tell. But I'm not planning on filing for it. Oh, I'm gonna take this magnesium while I'm thinking about it. And I think I had a greater point there that I've lost now, but that's all right. That tends to happen around here. Woody says, I don't get a lot of internet behavior, hate watching, doxing, multiple accounts, starting beef between channels, treating knowledge as commodity. Yeah, that's interesting. And it is, Tommy was right. It is just, I think it was Tommy that said that. It's high school. I mean, there is a lot of those dynamics in these streets, which I say tongue in cheek for the record. Yeah, there is a lot of that in these streets, I would say. But then, you get into what do people respond to versus what do they think they respond to? Because I think most of us will say, "Oh, well, I don't like drama." No, we almost all of us respond to it on at least some level. That's, as humans, I think that's baked into the cake. So yeah, I hear you, Woody. But I do engage in some of this myself, although certainly not the multiple accounts and not starting of beef. I don't know that I hate watch, and I certainly don't dox people. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm not. I guess I don't really do any of that. But then now we get into an individual person's personal code. And then, if I'm never bullshitting myself, then when I do bad things, objectively bad things, at a certain point, I'm going to be back to, oh, I'm not a good person. In fact, I'm a bad person. So it is ultimately self-serving and selfish that I'm behaving properly in many ways so that I can continue to accurately view myself as a so-called good person. It's all about me. That's the key to Benton. Benton is always doing what Benton wants to do. And I don't have a problem admitting to that. I just don't see the how that's a negative. I think we all do that. We just may not be honest with ourselves about it. And again, excluding certain family dynamics, immediate family dynamics, of course. And then Woody says his liver appreciates 3 weeks of 2 beers a day. Yeah, man. I just hate that 2 beer buzz. I really do. But again, not that I'm going to be drinking, but before I ruin my organs, 2 beers and a blunt. Of course, 1 beer, 24 ounce. It's 2 beers, two alcoholic drinks. Yeah, I wonder if he's still doing the ladies' night. Yeah, I could do it over here, you know, if we need to. So somebody should probably find out. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Manage this. Yeah, manage the energy, Pamela. Yeah, I don't know. If he announced it, I would assume it's still happening because certainly he would have known that he's going to be on vacation when he announced it. Let me go to his channel real quick, see what I can find. Yeah, there's no live scheduled, although it is pretty early in the morning. I don't know. Maybe I should email him. I know I got I had him email me his email address at one point. I never did. I haven't emailed him yet. Yeah, I enjoy the ladies only discussions. I know when Drew did his ladies night, and that was it. That was my idea in part. I, I think Toilet Bowl when he corrected me. Yeah, it wasn't my idea completely, but I certainly had a lot to do with that, putting that idea into the ether. But for whatever reason, when Drew did his, the live chat they were on some He-Man woman haters club. My thing's like, turn off your station, dude. If you don't want to hear the ladies, go somewhere else. Come back next time. What the fuck? I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good discussion. Well, and I think Yurt would be a good host. Drew was a good host for that. Me, not so much, necessarily. But I would be willing to try if it came down to it. Yep. Well, probably going to wrap up in the next 15 minutes or so if anybody's got anything. I think I covered what I wanted to cover in my notes. And hopefully, if they did mail me, if this was my last check and they mailed it, that will be a good reason to go see. Not that I need one, but I need to go visit my mama. Oh, let's look at cars real quick. Let's do that before I go. So I have been toying with the idea of purchasing a used vehicle, and then Rob Cleveland was seeking some guidance yesterday about purchasing of used cars. See what they got over here in Dallas for us. Man, I found that Subaru I would have bought for sure. So if I find the right vehicle, then that'll kind of make it up for me. That'll make my mind up for me. But they did not have the title, and I'm not purchasing a vehicle without a title under any circumstances. Although if I was a Texas resident and I knew I could get it registered in Texas, I would have made an exception for that car. But I, one of the things about it being so easy to register a vehicle in my home state of Arkansas is that's if everything makes sense to the person. It's once you get into like, oh, we're waiting on the title from California and it's registered in Texas, like that's just too many layers of complication. Like I wouldn't even attempt to ask these somewhat simple-minded folks to be able to figure that out, even if it was technically possible. It's like, no, I'm not. I am not going there with these people. It's not worth my time and aggravation. Time and aggravation becomes much more of a factor the older I get, I've noticed. I've been noticing a bunch of Acura 99 Acura RLs. Is it the same one over and over, I wonder? I'm noticing a lot of these. Can I full screen this? Nope. Good engine in these. Well, actually, no, that may not be. That's a different Cadillac than I'm thinking about. 2006 Cadillac CTS. I do like American cars, but not in this case. Not going to be some Fords, like a Ford Focus potentially. Here's a 2002 Camry. See, this is already a scam because they're asking $1,500. If this thing's running and they're asking $1,500, this is literally a scam. So sometimes what these people do is they post a vehicle that they know somebody who only has $1,500, but they may not even have it. They're like, oh, okay, well, I want this car, but I don't get paid till Friday. Oh, okay, well, send me $400 deposit. And then they just steal the deposit. So yeah, see, this is no way this is real. But yeah, I wish I could buy a 2002 Camry for $1,500. It'd be great. That runs and looks that good. But that's not a thing. It's probably that same scammer from the other day, which I didn't get scammed because I would never, ever do anything without, I'd have to be in the presence of the car and they'd have to have the title in their hand before they'd get a dime out of me. I ain't stupid. 2010 Hyundai Elantra. I do prefer a hatchback, though. No minivans. There's another. See, what's up with all these? These get poor fuel economy, these 99 Acura RLs. Good car, though, otherwise. Yeah, see, I'm not seeing much. And I know Facebook Marketplace. The problem is I hate Facebook, and I'm not trying to use Facebook. But that's where I found the Killed in Action Sorrento. Was up where my mom lives. But Facebook Marketplace, which I loathe. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on here, really. See, needs. See, exactly. If you see a Honda or a Camry for $1,900, it needs something. Or it's a scam, one of the two. Yeah, it needs a transmission. That is probably about the right asking price. Yeah. Although they're not going to get that much, I don't think. Nissan Altima is a no-go, as we mentioned with Rob. There's another Altima. Uh, 03 Acura TL. Now, then when you get into, does it have a timing belt or a timing chain? That's probably timing belt. And unless it says we just changed the timing belt in the ad, the timing belt has not been changed. Now, they might lie to you if you ask, but yeah. Let's look that up real quick. Timing belt. Yep. See, no, it's a no-go. Or you could just buy it knowing you have to change the timing belt immediately. Or you could inspect it and just hope for the best. But interference, that means once the old timing belt breaks, expensive, expensive, expensive. Let me check back with the audience, see if we've bored everybody to tears with the bill talk. Ran a few of them off, but most folks are still here. And Lexus IS, good car, but potential expensive. Yeah, they're great, but if it breaks, it's not going to be good. IS2, I don't know anything about those. Might take a look at that later. Not sure. Gonna have to do some research. These Chevy Cobalts are halfway decent from what I understand. Although even then, if you're not looking at like a Camry or an Accord or like a Corolla or a Civic, I would still be like 2010 Chevy Cobalt known issues, because it might be like, oh, well, they're great cars, except damn near every single one of them has this catastrophic failure. It's like, all right, well, probably won't be buying one of those then. That's why I was talking about, I think I was talking about that Toyota Venza yesterday. It's like, if you look that thing up, it's just no problems. It's like everything just works forever. Yeah, I'm not seeing nothing. More RLs. Must be the same one. 99 Acura RL. Well, that's enough of that. All right. Yeah, Pamela's always productive, it seems like. She's getting ready to do some canning. How long have we been streaming? I just realized that I failed to set my clock for my timer, timing out my meals. Start this thing. Quantum Epic, what's happening? Good to see you. Unfortunately, you've come in near the end of the broadcast. I'm about to walk my happy ass to Walmart. I may return later, although I know I'm probably going to want to get fucked up on synthetic cannabis vape pens again. Synthetic cannabinoids. Do I want to go out on a song? That's the question. I think maybe I do. Maybe not. Give the chat a minute or two, and then we'll get on out of here. All right. I think that's enough out of me. Oh, I got to share the screen, don't I? Still getting the hang of all this. You think I would have it by now, but I don't entirely. Thanks for watching. Bye. That ain't it. That's it.
Certain flowers seem strange to you, but all this poison and the roots shipped away from love and light. You wonder why it's screaming loud enough to abuse me, but all too cheap to amuse me. We stand in the marketplace with coats of tender, eyes on the hungry people. We pass the interrogation silence at the bottom of the government paper. Calling memories out of mind, pictures writhing deep inside. And once you've seen it, it's hard to hide. You wonder why you're screaming strong enough not to feel me, but all too loud not to hear me. We stand in the marketplace with coats of tender, eyes on the hungry people. We pass the interrogation silence at the bottom of the government paper.